everybody.
Hey, everyone, and happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday indeed.
Welcome to this edition of The Night Bite.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily. And we will be here soon with Pat. But before we get to that, we usually kind of highlight some events, things that had been going on and things coming up. And we have to say, with this intense cold that we've been going through, wind chills that are in the super negatives, it's been, a lot of events still going on. Some of them were really awesome. Some of them had great turnouts. Some of them were a little bit smaller this year. But I think that we're going to have a little bit more cold temperatures, and then it's going to start to get a smidge more of the nice kind of winter.
Yeah, I think we're gonna go try out the Wolf or the Fox River this weekend, Saturday, and then maybe go check out the new Expo Center at the Resch.
Yeah, there is a Green Bay boat show going on, and to be honest, I don't know much more than that. I just saw an ad this morning and would love to check out the new Expo Center. So
she just wants to look at new boats.
Well, that too. As far as events that are coming up, this weekend, Michigan Free Fishing Weekend. So Josh and I had originally planned to go, but to be honest, I think we're going to be working on our snowmobile a little bit before we truck out to Go Givic. But again, not just Go Givic. There's a ton of other bodies of water up there, and definitely get up there because there's some great fishing. And this weekend, it's free.
Yeah, they've been doing really well up there. So definitely go check it out, especially if it's free. Anything free is worth saving up for.
Other unique things coming up next week. Next week. Gosh, it sneaks up quick. Our normal Thursday night bite show will actually be on Wednesday.
Wednesday night.
We will be with Cold Snap, so that'll be actually really quite a lot of fun. But Thursday, we will actually be at an event starting the kickoff for Battle on Bago. So if you are at Battle on Bago, if you're going, if you are fishing, if you are just attending the event because it's going to be awesome, look for us because we will be there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Other than that.
Oh, yeah. Don't forget, Lakewood is running a cool prize thing. So if you're going to Battle on Bago and you have a Lakewood product, you bring it out there and take a picture, right?
Yep. Any Lakewood product, the hard cases, they have some new bait cases, little things this year. We have our ice pack, our medium ice rod, or our bags, rod cases. And we have been putting our new rods in them this year, and that's been working out really well for us. So if you have any of those things, tag them at Battle on Bago, and hopefully they'll come find you and give you a prize. Look for more information on their Facebook page.
Absolutely. So
other than that, we are here actually. Let's bring him in. Pat Kalmerton.
Hey, Pat.
Hello.
Hey, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here tonight. So first question is always kind of a vague one. For people who might not know who you are, tell us about yourself.
Oh, boy. Well, I am a husband of a beautiful bride with 5 children that keep me busy when I'm not chasing some fins and some feathers. But other than that, I am now out of Highland, Wisconsin, originally from Sheboygan, Wisconsin. We own a bunch of charter boats. So we have 3 salmon boats out of the port of Sheboygan, a couple boats up on the Bay of Green Bay for walleye. We travel all over the Midwest with other boats doing some tournament fishing. We guide fly fishing. We have ice fishing, so we do some inland stuff for some panfish, and we also do the Milwaukee Harbor for some trout. I travel all over doing some promotional for some sponsors of mine, being clam and blackfish, and keep busy that way. I do a lot of things like this and seminars all over the country, just kind of sharing the knowledge that I have been lucky enough to learn from a lot of the industry leaders and great friends like yourself. I mean, we sit down and we BS and we pin ideas off of each other. We share stories, we share ideas, and it makes us a better anglers all the way across the board. And that's why I was excited when you asked me to join you on this one, because if we can pass some knowledge or share some tips or share some stories or just enjoy the sport of fishing that we all love so much, I am 100% game.
Well, and we've been lucky enough to attend several of your seminars. One being up in Cecil a couple years ago, and then out at the Wisconsin Fishing Expo, you actually had a really good one on panfish. So we are a little bit familiar with kind of what you do, but you have all kinds of knowledge to share with us.
Well, it's kind of goofy. I've been kind of bouncing around lake to lake in both open water and ice for the last 30 years. So it's one of them things where I started with my father, knee high to a grasshopper, as they used to say, or like he says. And there's no better way to learn how to fail than to fail. It's one of them where there has been many a days where my bucket has been empty and my rod has been still. But that right there has certainly taught me a lot more precision within the sport of fishing, and kind of the different techniques. It's kind of goofy because I'm one of them unorthodox kind of, if you tell me what's working, I'm going to purposely avoid it as long as I can, just to prove to myself that I can come up with something that is effective, which a lot of people are. They don't like to admit it. You can go to a bait shop and they'll take you straight over to the dropkick jig and say, hey, put this on, you'll catch fish. But it's human nature to go back to the baits that have proven for yourself. It's a confidence builder. No matter, it's really goofy because I find myself doing the exact same thing along with every one of you that's watching. I can promise you, if you sit back and think about it, your rods or your tip-ups are rigged with a certain setup before you even get to the lake. You're not going to go to the lake and you're not going to tie your jig on or your pinhead minnow or anything else on after you get to the lake. It's already on. You're ready to go. You're excited. A little Indian JoJo at the county fair. You're going to get out there. You're going to drop it down. You're going to take your vex, find some fish, and start fishing. Throughout the day, if those fish are lockjaw and they're not cooperating, or they don't like your presentation, or whatever the case may be, or it's just a tough day of fishing, you're going to switch out a bunch of different baits. But before you go home, you're going to throw on the exact same bait that you started with. Is it true? I do it.
Yeah, I've done that.
Yeah.
Unless you find something that they cannot resist, you're going to go out there. You're going to, no matter how hard the fishing is, before you go home, you're going to go back to the exact bait that you started with. And we can go out there with 1,000 jigs, but we're going to use 20 of them, and you're going to end with the same one that you started with.
But I think that's a really good point, though, and here's why. Because, like you're saying in the first place, there's a lot to be said about confidence. And so often that confidence bait is what is on your rod, and if they are not biting that, that bait that will work, you switch it up to 800 other million things, and then by the end, you're like, gosh, maybe they are back to that first one that I know, and so I have to agree.
It's a no fail. I mean, every one of us do it. You can sit there and tell yourself that you're not going to do it, but before you go home, you end up doing it. I mean, it's human nature. It's a pattern. It's one of them things that no matter how badly you don't want to, you do it. It's habit. Yeah.
So, quite a few people at home saying hello, quite a lot of love coming in for you, Pat. So, a lot of people, eager to see you and wishing that we were all here in person. But some fishing question coming in. So how is the Winnebago bite? Have you ever fished Winnebago?
I fished quite a bit on Lake Winnebago, and it's kind of funny that you were mentioning that you're going to be there Thursday. I will be joining you. We're going to be rubbing elbows, if you will. So I'm looking forward to Battle on Bago. I've been there for the last couple of years, both ice and open water. As far as fishing, quite honestly, it's the same thing as Bago always is. You got some people on the upper lakes and some people that are going to find some fish. There's going to be a lot of white bass that are caught, and travel right now, some of those cracks are opening up a little bit with this cold water, or the cold weather and their expansion and stuff. And Donnie's always on, sunken, giving the the fishing reports, and Otter Street is giving the fishing reports, and all the different clubs are giving the fishing reports. So the one thing that I can tell you is use extreme caution. No matter what body of water that you're on, ice expands and contracts. It just does. Ice fish is one of them things where you have to use extreme caution no matter what you're doing. But the fishing, it's Lake Winnebago. One day they can be right there. The next day they'll move 3 miles. I wish I had a book that I could write for you on Lake Winnebago. It would make me a lot of money. If I could sit here and tell you Lake Winnebago, I'm going to go out there and pound the fish every given day, I'd be lying to you. Summer fishing, winter fishing, it doesn't matter. There's just one thing about that lake that it can make you a hero or a zero really quick. As far as the upper lakes, they're a little bit more consistent. It's not even that they're shallower lake, because Lake Winnebago is very shallow as far as the majority of the consistency of that fish, but there's a lot more structure. You have a lot more of the weeds, and you got a lot more little humps and stuff like that, where that's going to be producing, I expect, a lot of the fish coming out of those lakes. But don't overpass Lake Winnebago right now. I know a lot of people are gearing up for the Battle on Bago. I know that. I can tell you straight out, I will not be fishing with a ticket. I'll be bebopping around, and I'm sure that we're going to be visiting different groups out there and having a good time, and hopefully we get on a good bite or whatnot. But the last thing that I'm going to write now, as far as, I don't know exactly where they are. We've been spending a lot of time down on the Milwaukee Harbor, and I can't sit here and lie to you and say, hey, we know exactly where they are, because we don't. And I don't need to. That's the best part about it. I'm not going to fish at. So.
Well, I think the other thing about it that you are exactly right. It is a big body of water. That's part of why it can accommodate such a big tournament. And, conditions change quickly. Fishing changes quickly. And like you're saying, sometimes those fish, they'll swim around in packs, or even, a little bit less than that. And that move, they can be on. And if they're not moving, sometimes the bite gets tough and the lips get tight. And so, I think nobody's really able to entirely predict what's going to happen, especially with this deep freeze ending and possibly some nicer weather coming. So we'll all have to see how it goes.
It looks like it's going to be in the mid-20s next week. I'm excited about that. I'm excited to go out and just enjoy some sunshine, hopefully, and some
sweatshirt weather,
camaraderie. What's that?
Sweatshirt weather.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. I like it. I like it.
So I guess I don't intend this to be a Battle on Bago whole show, but I've never been, and I'm excited. I know a lot of other people are in those same shoes. So for people who have never been and are looking to get out this year, what other tips can you give us in general about the event?
Go have fun. That is the one thing that I can honestly say. It's a lot. It's not like the Brainerd JCs, because you're not in a designated area, in the years past. Now, this year, I know it was virtual, and they had a great turnout over there doing that. But Battle on Bago is one of them where it is open to anybody and everybody, all ages, all sexes. It doesn't matter your skill level, because the person that catches, I think, the 2000th prize this year is a brand new truck. So you don't have to have that top prize. It eliminates the cheating where, you're going to come in and say, it eliminates that aspect of somebody sneaking a fish in, which it's not really even sneaking, because there is no check in the morning. There is no check in midday. There is no nothing. It is on the honor system. It's taking your word that you're just going to go have some fun, and with that being said, you have every walks of life. That you have the people that have the big fancies, and you have the people that have the, not to pun anything about this, but the old 1970s snowsuit onesie with the bucket. You see people out there with schoolie rods and beaver dams and clams and fribbles, and there is no real definition of a tournament like this. Now, the magnitude of the people that show is tremendous. It is one of them where I have pictures of a young man last year had 2 beautiful walleyes come up to the stage. I think he was 8 years old.
Oh.
It was awesome. I got multiple pictures of that, and just the pride and the joy in his face was something that is why we're in the sport of fishing. You could see that he was hooked for life. And then you have, the beer tent. I mean, they have live music on Friday night, and there's going to be, a beer tent going on, and everybody sharing their stories and everybody talking about what's going on, because this event starts Friday morning, runs all day Friday, and then again on Saturday. So it's one of them where people have the ability to move and goof around and have fun with their friends and come in for a bite to eat. And, there's a lot of tournaments I've been part of, and most of them are, teams of 2 and 40, 50, 60 teams and run and gun and pre-fish for a week. And some people are fishing hard right now. Some people are out there and they are going to be on the fish. And there's others that just show up and they drill a hole and say, yep, this is where my launch air goes. I'm fishing right here. And that's okay. It's awesome.
That's okay.
So that there's exciting. The atmosphere is exciting. The stories that are told. It's, I believe that the sturgeon spearing will still be going on. So make sure that you use caution there too, because there are some shacks that are going to be moved, and those holes should be marked with laths and stuff like that, but some of them don't. So there's a lot of there's roads plowed. I mean, let's go have some fun. Absolutely.
Well, and I was going to bring up exactly the point that you were saying, that, this Saturday is actually the start of spearing season on that Winnebago system, and so there's going to be a huge rush of people out there. That is always, a whole event in itself. But then, 1 week from then, like you're saying, be careful of the open holes. But, that travel certainly affects the lake also, just the extra foot traffic and all of that. So, I know you mentioned it really quick before, but I think it's worth one more mention. Can you give us a name, a few places of where do we go and check the conditions for Bago? Like, where do we get that good information to be safe as possible on the ice?
Yeah, you can go to the Brothertown. They have a fishery over there, Pipe Fishing Club. They're going to have information where the cracks are and the trees are. Donnie over at Sunken, he has some reports going on. Otter Street Fishing Club has some reports going on. They're all going to have where the roads are plowed and where the trees are, and bridges on where to cross those cracks and stuff. One thing that I can say, coming out of Oshkosh, be very careful with the river right there, which is just south of Oshkosh. When you're coming out and that river is dumping back into the, Lake Winnebago, there's always thinner ice there anytime that there's any water moving and stuff. So I would certainly use some caution, but you'll see the crowds. I mean, Nothing attracts a crowd like a crowd. It doesn't matter if it's out on the ice or on open water. You're going to know where the fish are biting. Anybody that's been out on Bago, you're going to see the tubers, or you're going to see the old Suburbans and vans and stuff that have the big whip, and those guys are on the white bass because that's what they do. They just keep hopping from they're tubers. My dad has one. He's, it's just one of them things where, hey, why not fish in comfort if you got it and you don't have to get out of your vehicle? That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So, Battle on Bago aside, because that's going to be exciting, and, we can't wait to see you there. But, let's talk a little bit about how you're doing this season. You were talking about being a very diverse angler. So I'm a little bit interested to hear, how do you decide what to target and what makes you successful?
I target with bites. And I don't chase, I do chase marks, I should say that. The one thing that I do is right when I get there, depending on how shallow a water I'm at, if it's really shallow water, really clear water, anything of that sort, now that we have more ice, what I personally like to do is I drill the holes. I go out and I drill my 40, 50 holes that I intend to fish. I may drill 10 holes in one area all the way across the lake and not even fish those fish. And I'll leave. And I learned this years ago. I was actually fishing Devil's Lake, North Dakota. Is I would drill a hole, I would sit down, I would fish that hole, and I wouldn't get any fish. And I'd get so frustrated because I wasn't marking fish in that 8, 10 foot of water. Well, a lot of times when you're targeting fish, unless you're doing suspended crappies or something of that sort, you're going to be in shallower water. You're not going to be in that 100, let's say 40 foot. Even at 40 foot, those crappies are going to be 20 foot down because they're going to be suspended. So you have the shaving of the ice, you have the, you look up at the bottom of the ice, and also, if you're a fish, you're looking at all these holes that are starting to be in that ice that's not consistent. So what I like to do is I drill the hole, I leave that hole, I'll be gone for probably 20 minutes, and then I'll come back to that hole and I'll fish that because those fish had time to settle down, they come in. It's the same thing as, let's say you're going deer hunting. You walk into a stand, they take off running. You drive into a field with deer in the field, they take off running. They're not going to sit there and watch you do whatever you're doing. Same thing with fish. You're going to go into the fishing area, you're going to drill your holes, you're going to get out of there. And a lot of times if I'm going to come back and fish that, I'll park probably 30, 40, 50 yards away and then walk into where I'm planning on fishing so I don't spook those fish. Then I'm not going to start fishing until I see marks. I'm going to take my Vexilar, I'm going to put it in the hole, I'm going to see some marks. Once I find those marks, now it starts. So when I start fishing, a lot of times I'll go to an area, and if you're looking at Navionics and you pick out your spot that you want to fish, let's say I'm going to pinpoint this hump right in the middle, and I'm going to drill my holes on that hump. Well, before I leave, I'm going to drill holes all the way around that perimeter. Those are for my tip-ups. I'm going to drill my holes all the way around that perimeter, and then I'm going to leave, and I'm going to come back. Once I find the bullseye of where I want to fish, now I know I have holes all over the place. So before I even start jigging, hopefully I'm with 2 or 3 other people that can start jigging and get on those fish right away. I'm going to take my tip-ups and I'm going to set them up around the perimeter. So when I'm fishing into that bullseye, especially if I'm fishing a schooling fish like a crappie that roam, that fish goes off to the side or whatnot, I can see where that school of fish is going. Now, this is way before live scope and, everything else to be able to see where that school is moving. But there is 90% of the population that does not have that technology that is out there right now. It's out of the price range. You can't justify it. You don't need, I don't want to say you don't need it because it's a huge advantage. But, the tip-ups, you put those on the perimeter and you get a flag over here, you're going to run over there and I'm going to break that fish. So in other words, what I'm talking about is I have my tip-up right here. I'm not going to pick it up and move it to the side because it's a panfish. He's going to feel me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over. All I'm going to do is take that, my hand, put it right on the T-bar, set the hook, catch that fish. Now I brought my rod along and I'm going to jig down that hole. That fish was over there and he was chewing on that minnow. He was chewing on that wax worm, whatever the case may be. And what happens when that happens? Debris starts flying. Schools of fish come in, just like at the fish tanks over at any big retailer that you can watch them. Also, they all go on a feeding frenzy. They attracted them. Now I'm going to take my jig stick. I'm going to take that off. I'm going to catch those fish down that hole. Now, also, I see another tip-up take off and my fishing slowed down. I'm going to take the time to reset this tip-up and allow that fish to throw more debris in and bring more fish to that area. I'm using a tip-up to attract more fish, but yet see where that school of fish is moving.
Well, and I like this idea because, we've talked even this season about using, different rods that, you put out, you spread out, you can see where those fish are going to move to. But when you have something like a tip up, you can maybe spread out a little bit farther. I think, you want to be a very respectful distance from your equipment. I know a lot of states have very specific regulations. Maybe Wisconsin doesn't so much, but I like the idea of, being able to follow that bite based on what your equipment is showing you.
Yeah, I mean, those tip-ups are within 20 yards. It's one of them where they're right around you, and then when you move, I mean, we're not talking Montana. You go out to Montana, it's awesome. You can run 6 lines, put them all over the lake. You can tell every one of my tip-ups, they have my phone number on it, and you come down here, they got that's all rigged up. That's ready to go. So when I get out there, right there is all my contact information. I get out there, I put this tip up in the water. You don't have to check it for 24 hours. You can leave them out there 24 hours at a time, 6 tip ups per person. You go out there, you're starting the day by catching lake trout. How awesome is that? I mean, you get out there in the morning after a good night of hanging out and stuff, and now I'm catching fish before I even think about drilling a hole. Sweet. I wish that was everywhere, but yeah. I'm not going to lie. I like catching fish, but, so the one other thing that I can tell you is now this setup has upped my tip-up fishing tremendously, and it has done extremely well. And anybody that's seen me talked about it. I seen the picture that you posted right before this, Josh, where that walleye and that pike I was holding both of them.
Yep.
So there's a story about that. Is when I started running this, the very first tip up that I had on my drop shot, I started running drop shots off of my tip ups. In Wisconsin, you're allowed 3 lines per person. I'm going to jig 1. Each person gets 1 tip up. That's 2 more lines because there's 2 hooks on there. So, all right, just to make sure that everybody knows I'm being legal, but instead of me putting 6 tip ups out, if I have 3 people, I'm going to put 3 tip ups out because it's less work and it's been cold. So what I've been doing on this is I take it, and this is really cool, but going back to that picture there, that pike and that walleye came off of my first ever drop shot tip up at the same time.
Oh.
Yeah, so the walleye hit the bottom hook and the pike hit the top hook. I was running a shiner on my bottom hook, and I was running a sucker on my top, I was running a sucker on my bottom hook and a shiner on my top hook. The walleye ate the sucker, the pike ate the shiner right at the inset. It was awesome. It was awesome. So right here, you can see my weight.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I got myself about a 3-foot lead right here, actually less than that. And I got my first hook, just a single hook. Then I got another 3 feet, and then I got my other hook. So what I'm doing is when I go over to fish walleyes or to fish anything that has fish down there, I'm going to look at my Vexilar, see some marks. Now, the very first thing that enters that water column, and not a weight trying to figure out how deep I am, or the graph to find out how long it's going to take, it eliminates so much time because I go over there, hook on 2 minnows, shoot it down until it hits bottom, reel it up till it's tight, and I know exactly where I'm at. I am exactly 23 inches off the bottom on the first one and 40 inches off the bottom on the second one. Now you got both of them set for walleye, pike, or whatever. Fish swim. I can't tell you where they're going to be and how they're going to be and all that other stuff. But not only that, but it also puts a school of minnows in a hole. Mm-hmm. I got 2 minnows swimming around against each other and everything else. It has scent, it has vibration, it has, attracted, it has everything right there in that area. So I started running these drop shot tip ups. I'm telling you, the tip up production that I have gotten out of them is tremendous. Not only that, we use them for trout. So we'll put a bead, we'll put a bead up on top with a spawn sack on the bottom, or we'll put a minnow on the bottom with a bead up top. There's so many different variables, especially when you get into the trout fishing, that you can do a lot of different things with it.
Honestly, I love this. I mean, I don't mean to be speechless, but I guess that's the thing about you were talking earlier, trying different things and not what everyone else is doing. And that's exactly what this is, a lot of people will run this on their jigging rod, but to put this on your tip up, I think really, really is a cool thing. And I love what you're talking about with the minnows kind of swimming differently. That creates a lot of action. It makes me think of Theophilus Tolliver isn't he South Dakota also? North Dakota. And he'll take two minnows facing opposite directions, but he'll put it on one hook. Yep. And I like that, the way that they kind of fight each other. I think he even calls it dueling minnows. Go and check that out. But I like really what you're saying, that the two of them kind of have the freedom to move about, or like you're saying, the sucker on one, the shiner on the other. There's a lot of opportunity to catch fish on that.
So the other trick to that is when you're running the snare, the snare on your hook to make it come back through the second time, so your hook sits out horizontal instead of sitting straight, up and down. So if you take it and you run that snare down through, take your tag in and run it back through the eye of that hook again, and your hook will go from that to that. And that also puts it out a little bit, that so it's not right tight on your line.
Well, and the other cool thing about this is that not only can you use this as a tip up presentation, but the last few years the rod in some kind of a contraption has become a really huge thing. So like your iFish Pro, your Finicky Fooler, those have flags on it also. So this whole tactic about setting up a perimeter and having those indications of school movement work through all this. And this rig, you could pre-rig up and put on your pool noodle and then clip it onto a snap swivel even if you wanted to.
Yep.
On those rods as well as your tip up. So yeah,
100%. That's Automatic Fishman is, that is one of our go-tos down on Milwaukee Harbor. Because those trout are so finicky, they'll come up, they'll mouth it, they'll back off, and that's why, like the tip ups, I've been pulling springs off of the tip ups and sanding the spools down and putting just a glow bead or a rubber bead on there, so you have less resistance on there for a fish that takes off. The other thing when I'm fishing, especially if you're on a very, very finicky bite, tilt that spool so it's more vertical than it is horizontal. That way, all your line comes out to the same point, but here you have two different angles that line has to go. So if you're straight out like that, here, I'm going to take that off. I got a little stronger line on there, so you might be able to see it. So you see that it comes off of that spool and down. So it has to come out to the side and then down. Where if I tilt that, your 8-inch hole is going to be, it doesn't matter how this is set, as long as it's not touching the ice. If I tilt that, it's more almost like a rattle reel. There's less resistance coming down. And then on the top side on the flag, it has less resistance coming this way as well. Right now I almost have it tilted too much. It's automatically taken off. But you barely have to use any tension once I can find the line. And there's zero tension before you have a bite. That's the exact same way that I set it when I'm fishing crappies. All these fish, if you have anything that offers any sort of resistance when they come and bite it, that was a big craze. So long time ago, especially walleye fishing, I switched to number 18 and 16 trebles because they are so small that fish does not feel it. You'll get them right in the side or they'll swallow. One or the other. Your hooking percentages will go way up, but everybody thinks I'm crazy for using such a little hook. It's not the hook that catches a fish. I mean, you get one barb in the side or whatnot. They have to concentrate more on the diameter of the line then they do the hook, because you got a line coming down through the water column, and that's why all of my leads are all fluorocarbon, so it doesn't reflect light, it sinks, it blah, 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 blah. Mono kind of floats a little bit. I don't like to use weights. When I'm running tip up, if I have a weight down on the bottom, those things, now drop shot's completely different because that's going down and the minnow's above the weight. But if I'm just running a minnow down, I'll look at my Vexilar and I'll find where the fish are. And I'll put my bait right in front of their mouth before I even walk away. I know exactly in the water column where that fish is. I do all my setting with either the Vex or the drop shot. I will not go out there and throw a weight down through the water column. So, it just, maybe that's just me thinking that, I'm on to something. I don't know, but it seems to work. So I'm not going to change it. It's just like that jig. When you get to the lake, you have that confidence. I've gained a tremendous amount of, and with that being said, it's opened a tremendous amount of opportunities for myself as well, as far as trying different things, running different areas, how to set different ways. Even with the rail tip up, there's so many people out there with the rail tip up. All you got to do is bend that shaft and you have less resistance. So there's so many different things, for big pike, zero strike rigs, going away from that. Can you see that? I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
So you got the fluorocarbon rig on there. I actually have one set up on here so you can see it a little bit better. But this here, going back to the same sort of presentation where you have the spinners on there that every time that minnow kicks, you can see that flash. And these things, matter of fact, I think I just seen a video. Who was that? I think one of the videos they just showed running hot dogs, in northern Wisconsin.
I do that.
Yeah, that's actually one of our favorites because, I grew up in Minnesota, and so for me, I fished Red Lake a lot, and that's been a thing up on Red Lake since I was little. That's not anything new to me. But when it started catching on out this way, everybody thought it was so crazy, and I was like, well, that's just kind of what they I know they do it in Red Lake. But we use it for two reasons. One, it's a lot less expensive, and we don't fish a whole lot of live bait. So if I don't have to go drop $14 on a dozen shiners just to get shiners, I'll spend $1 on hot dogs, and if I get hungry, then I can have lunch. And two, I don't have to keep them alive. You can freeze them, you can scent them however you want. It's not a secret that we'll put a little bit of olive oil and some garlic powder in with ours, and they just sit in the garage until they're used up, and that works really awesome. And it's a cool thing. You can throw them in your sled. You don't have to worry about them. You don't have to bring aerators or batteries, and they work just fine. The thing is that it's a very similar profile to a fish, and you just set it a foot under the ice, no matter if you're out in 30 feet or if you're in 2 feet.
Because it's like a dead fish.
Because it's a dead fish sitting up under the ice, and pike will come and they'll cruise underneath the ice, just picking up the dead stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Easy meal.
Yeah.
Well, and you do have to think, especially when you're looking for pike like that, what are they doing in the season? We do have the best luck with this closer towards the end of the season. Mm-hmm. Pike do close at a certain point, so then you don't do that after that. But end of the season, there's always some kind of fish die off. Some amount of that will happen even in healthy lake systems or other systems. And so, especially when fish are at that end of the season, the oxygen levels are getting a little bit lower in the water and they're looking for an easy meal. And so especially late season is when those hot dogs will work.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. I'm glad that you guys brought that up because, as far as I would have never thought about a foot under the ice. I'm not going to lie to you. You hear everybody out in North Dakota and Minnesota and, Wisconsin, they're starting to run it a little bit more. And I guess I never thought about, hey, where do you set this thing? Because a lot of people would set it exactly how they set a minnow, 18, 24, 36 inches off the bottom, majority of the year. And that's where they're going to run. And when you're talking, the die off up on top. That's a huge, boy, I hope people brain mark that. I hope they got that down,
Well, and it'll work. I mean, it's a huge scent attractor, and on the bottom it'll work. But I just think, you have the profile. Use the silhouette. Use the time of year. Just use the environment to your advantage. Like you said, the dead fish sitting under the ice. There's how many stories have we read where people are ice fishing and they're catching panfish, and then all of a sudden their panfish stop and they look down and they're in 30 feet of water and there's a pike stretching across both holes in their shack, waiting for you to throw another bluegill down.
Yeah.
So if you would have had a hot dog sitting on the outside of your shack,
I would have ate it, Josh. I would have ate it. That hot dog would have never got down that hole. I would have been over there dribbling away. I got fire down. Hold on 1 second.
All right.
The other thing, I'll kind of keep talking as you're moving around. The other thing, I guess 2 things about the hot dog. Some people get really super caught up in and that's okay sometimes because you need it, because you were just talking about this. Sometimes people get really caught up in small trebles and putting one on each side of the hot dog or whatever. And I would say this is an instance where I don't find that to be necessary. I take my tip up line and I put a bunch of bright colored beads on. I don't know why I do that. Pink seems to work great. And then just that big old treble hook, I just shove it into that hot dog. There's no fancy way. I just bury as much of the treble hooks as I can, and toss it down there like we described. But a fun other little tidbit besides that, if you are the kind of person who're bringing kids out on the ice or whatever, it's really fun you can carve up that hot dog any way you want. Give it a tail, make it look like a fish, cut the bottom to look like an octopus. It does not.
Oh, man, I love it.
Yeah, but it could be fun. If you have other people around to keep them busy.
Little Miss Finley is going to be over there with my pocket knife. I'm going to have a hard time getting her to jig. She'll be making little creations out of the hot dogs. That's awesome. That right there. You just bought me another 2 hours under the water. I am 100% game on that.
Oh my gosh. Awesome. So while we're talking about your kids a little bit, do you have other tips for getting on the ice with kids?
Yeah, definitely. Number one and most and foremost, bring about 10 pair of socks, because they're going to step in holes. Bring about 30 pair of mittens or gloves, because they're going to either lose them or they're going to go sledding or they're going to do this or that. One good thing is oversized gloves. Get gloves almost twice the size of your kids' normal wear, if not even bigger. I like to take and put them in my gloves, and the reason being, mittens are always best. They can hold on to hand warmers on the inside. They're not really, they're not hard for me to put on when their hands get wet and cold and everything else. I can just slide them on. If they go farther up, the better, because otherwise, that snow will get into their wrists and stuff. A lot of times, especially Drake, he's 5 years old, and I think if there's a hole within 5 miles, he's going to find it. So he'll bury his foot into a hole first 10 minutes of every trip. So make sure that before you even go out, that you're taking a Ziploc bag and putting it over his sock. That way you can at least dry out the boot on the Mr. Heater before you have to replace the sock. I've become pretty good at this. Bring frisbees, bring footballs, bring tons of snacks. Usually I end up eating most of them before the kids get hungry. That's always a good one. So, and not only that, my kids, it's kind of goofy that you say that, because obviously I have my jig boxes and I got plenty of those. But when you have, get the smaller ones, the little flip ones. So right here, the profile is really small and it has a couple of jigs. Each kid has their own jig box. So therefore, when they go out there, they can sit there and they can color coordinate it. They can look through it. And you'd be amazed on how often they're just, especially Monty, my other 5-year-old, they're twins, by the way. She'll sit there and they'll, it will be perfect. all the way across the board with the same kind of jig. Then 10 minutes later, it's all colors. Then 5 minutes after that, I mean, so they just entertain themselves. That is their way of a color book. It really is. As far as the rods, they're all in the, actually I have my voltage rods, what are the bright yellow ones, but there's a piece of yellow. I should walk out and get one, but I have their names written with a Sharpie. Now they have a signature series rod, So
that's awesome.
Finley's got hers, Monty's got hers, Drake has his. Sometimes it creates problems because one or the other will have the other, but it kind of brings it back like we're sitting at home again. They're just bickering at each other, so it's kind of, so bring that stuff along. Obviously, a lot of snacks and goofing around. I have the big hub tent. I take the 6,000 out when they go along, and they sit inside. I don't drill holes on the inside. That's just, don't do it. You drill holes on the inside of that thing, you might as well plan on moving it 5 seconds later because it's already stepped into every hole. So that's a good time. I have the harness, for a couple of empty sleds. So you'll see me being the stagecoach or the big what is it, draft horse or whatever, pulling them across the lake. But more than anything, tip ups. We have gotten so crazy in all the jigging spoons, and everybody loves the feel of fish on the end of a rod. I am 100% into it. I will take rods and I will get out there, and there is nothing better than feeling that thump. Once you become an angler for a long time, to feel that hook set, to get the exhilaration of watching that mark or chasing that mark, and that mark, you're also find yourself coming up and going down and coming up and going down because that fish is playing with your emotions. Well, the kids are going to get there eventually. They will get there. But before that, take yourself back, and if you haven't gone, I guess if you have never had the opportunity as a youngster, do it now. When a flag goes up, you go running. I don't do it so much anymore because I want them to attract more fish. But my kids, that flag goes up, it is a Cremo Shimo, first one there. Even if you beat me there, I'm tackling you, and they're taking it. It is fun for them. They love the action of tip-ups because it's the moments of they're the moments of excitement. It's come on, and they take off. They can be ready to go home, and all of a sudden a tip-up takes off, and you're good to go for another hour because they want another one to go. So
if you tell me your heart doesn't skip a beat when you see that flag go up, I don't know.
That right there, somebody asked me once about guiding. When are you going to be done guiding? And I didn't even have to think about it. When I lose that excitement, it doesn't matter. I've said this once, and I'll say it 500,000 times. Doesn't matter if you're 5 years old or 100 years old. That bobber goes down, that flag goes up, that rod goes off, you get excited. It's in your blood. It's just either you have it or you don't. And if you get into fishing and you have it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You don't know what it is. You can go over there and that T-bar may not be moving, but yet you're still wondering if it's there. That bobber goes down and you set the hook. That moment between you setting the hook and feeling the fish, you don't know how big that fish is. You could be bluegill fishing and a 40-inch pike takes that. You don't know how big it is. That's why when everybody asks me, what is your favorite style of fishing? It's fishing in general. But I have come to the point in my life that it all depends on season. But I've come to the point in my life where a bobber goes down. That is my favorite because I just don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. It's the same thing as a tip up. The flag goes up. Well, is it a crappie? Is it a walleye? Is it a perch? Is it a pike? What is it? I don't know.
Well, and it's funny that you describe that mystery feeling, because a lot of us that are deep into this try and fill that void of that feeling when we're not able to be out on the ice, when we're stuck in the house, or we're, coming home from work, not enough time to go out fishing. And some of us end up with a whole basement building fishing rods, building lures, and it never fills that void of just simply watching a bobber go down. But we keep doing it, thinking like, okay, well, we'll use all this stuff next time we go out, and then we end up watching a bobber the whole time. It's
you hit it dead on. I probably have 100 rods rigged up out in my garage. That's not talking about all my salmon rods and everything else on boats, or my walleye rods in boats, or anything else. I got 100 rods out there. I bet you if I walk out there, 75 of them would have bobbers on them. And I have braid going down through the bobber, like real little braid. I'm talking like 4-pound braid, so I can cast a mile if I want to, into 3-pound fluorocarbon and a real little hook on the bottom, just because of the pan fishing. Now, I'm geared up because of my kids. If they want to go fishing, I get to go fishing. That gives me an excuse to go fishing. If I'm not guiding, if I'm not working, and my kids want to go fishing, you're darn right I'm going fishing. And now I got a gentleman here in town that has kids the exact same age. So, we get ourselves into trouble because the dads always want to go fishing, but there's not enough room for all 5 kids and the dads. So now we're going to get into even more trouble because I think we're going to get a pontoon boat so we can fit everybody on.
There you go.
There's a solution to everything. If we can figure out just to go a little bit bigger, then we can all go.
That's funny. Well, and pontoon boat was going to be a perfect segue into my next question of what does the season look like for you? Winter, we hate to say, is, well, coming towards the end of the season here for some people, quicker than others, I guess. And so what is the end of your season and spring looking like?
I'm excited about it. I'm excited about it because I have a lot of fishing going on ice yet. So we got Battle on Bagel. And then my wife is stealing me for a weekend to go up to Vegas with the family for a little while the following weekend. But then I get right back into it. So we have a 10-day trip that we're going to start in northern Minnesota. We're going to fish up there, and then we're going to go up with the Anderson brothers, and we're going to film some pike up on Lake of the Woods and stuff through Wednesday. And then we're going to drop down and do another YouTube series over at Devil's Lake, North Dakota, and we're going to fish over there. And then when we get back, we're going to be in late March. And at that time, the river systems are going to start opening up on the Fox and the Wolf and stuff like that. And our boats are going to be wild. It's going to be one of them where we're going to be chasing that trophy of a lifetime walleye. You're chasing. It started out, and there again, it started out 25 and then 28 inches and then 30 inches and then 32 inches. You just keep bumping it because of those fisheries coming off the Bay of Green Bay, especially when you get into those tributaries. The fish of a lifetime is the next fish that's going to bite. They're there. It's just, when is it going to go? So we're going to be chasing that walleye with clientele up on the Fox and stuff like that for a couple of weeks. And then we get into the steelhead, and we're going to be chasing steelhead with center pins and fly rods and stuff like that in the tributaries to Lake Michigan now. And we're going to go over and we're going to be fishing Sheboygan River, Pigeon River, stuff like that, all the way through for those steelhead. And then we get into the brown trout that's going to be in the skinny water. So once you get into April, end of March, April, depending on the water temperature, and once the boat landings open up, then we'll be chasing some brown trout on the skinny water. And then we roll right into, the panfish and the salmon. And I'm gonna, oh gosh, I hate to say it, but I have to, pretty much 4 or 5 weeks worth of turkey hunting in there because you can't take the turkey hunting. Every season that comes around, I can't wait till it gets here. And I hit it hard for a little while, and then I find something else for a little while, and I go back and hit it hard again. So we have the advantages within the Wolfpack crew that we have enough family members there as far as employees and everything else that you can tell when somebody's starting to get burnt out from salmon fishing for an extended period of time. So, hey, it's time for you to go walleye fishing for a little while, or it's time for you to grab a fly rod for a little while, or, go chase some panfish for a little while. So every one of our guides, every one of our captains, every one of our family members are, they're just versatile enough that they can do that.
Awesome.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
And so for the people at home who are listening to all of this, because it does certainly sound alluring, remind us how we get a hold of you for things like your guide service or to check out what you're doing fishing.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go wolfpackadventures.com. You can go to Wolfpack Adventures on Facebook and Twitter and all that other fancy stuff like we're talking on now. You can call the fishing line. It's 207-1212, which is 920. So it's a 920-207-1212. That's a booking line. So that's going to be a lot easier than calling me and calling Jared and calling Jordan. And, it's just a lot easier just calling that, asking them questions, especially if you're looking at trips or whatnot, and they'll be able to help you out. But, shoot some messages. We're here to help out. We're here to let everybody catch fish. Man, if you see us catching fish, come on over. Don't be shy. If you have some questions, hit me up. You can send me messages right on Facebook or whatever. Text me if you got my number. Whatever you want to do. I learned from somebody. I'm fortunate to have enough time to be on the water as much as I possibly can. And if I have something that can help you, I have a quick little story. I'm sorry, I'm rambling on, but I have a quick story. I have a gentleman that called me up, and he was just awed because he called me. He was going fishing up at Green Bay, and he calls me. He says, "Hey, I don't want to book a trip, but I have questions." Yeah, go ahead. And we talked for 20 minutes, and he called me the next day, and you could hear the tears in his voice. You really could. You could hear the tears in his voice. He said, I called probably 10 different guides that day, and every one of them, as soon as they knew that I didn't want to book a trip, they steered me. You could tell, I went to 5 different spots, and there wasn't a person there. And when you started talking, I listened to you, and you were the 5th spot that I went to. I got there, 2 of your boats were there, and my daughter caught the biggest fish of her life, and we caught fish all day long. But here's what's really cool about it. He said, I am a single dad. I am working almost 80 hours a week, and I had 2 hours to take my daughter fishing, and you helped me out. And that there was huge to me. Mm-hmm. But don't ever think that you should be afraid to come up and ask questions or BS or tell us your stories or show us your pictures, because I tell you what, we get more of a vibe off of that than our own, to be honest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that one there, it tugged at the heart a little bit.
Yeah.
It really did. It was like, that's awesome, because if I was that dad and I could do that for my daughter and I looked like the hero to my daughter, that right there is what the network that you guys put on and the things that you guys are doing to help the people that aren't fortunate enough to be able to do this every day and share some technique. Kudos to you two, honestly. Oh. Well, I'm serious, because you have people tuning in to learn things or to talk things. And, it's just, it's awesome what you guys are doing. I appreciate being on. I really do. But I just also wanted to tell you guys that we appreciate the things that you guys do.
Oh, well, we appreciate hearing that.
Yeah. Well, and that's really besides fishing, this is really our other passion. And just knowing that there's people out there that it is helping, and that people are getting something from it, and potentially having a cool story like yours come out of it, that's really awesome.
Yeah, no, I think the majority of the people that tune into these things, all the way across the board, they're doing it for a reason. Number one, it's entertaining, and number two, they can learn something out of the deal. So it's the technology nowadays and the way that you guys bring it across it's awesome.
Oh my goodness. Well, we appreciate it. And the bunch of nice comments coming up on the comments also. So you guys, you're all the best. I'm just really flattered. I appreciate it. So I guess, I'm really excited for the season that's coming up and, hopefully more good stories to come, hopefully more great phone calls like what you're talking about and all that kind of good stuff. I know typically we would bump into at Wisconsin Fishing Expo that would be happening at the end of the month here. So hopefully in a month and a year.
Well, we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to see each other at Battle on Bagel. Come on. Come on. That's going to let you get out of there without buying me a beer. You're crazy.
Well, you'll know where to find us. We'll be by the striker table. We'll help you put a suit on.
Perfect. When we're done with that, we can go over to the clam table and have one.
There you go.
I probably won't put a striker suit on. I might get myself into trouble.
Fair enough, man.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you again so much for being on. And we cannot wait to see you next week.
Yeah, well,
great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. We'll talk to you in a bit.
Yeah.
And to everybody at home, thank you guys for tuning in because certainly that's part of what makes this all so fun. We love hearing your questions and your comments, and we can talk about all kinds of good stuff, but we love hearing you guys.
At the end of that one, that was. But,
oh my!
Yeah. So remember Wednesday next week because we will be Battle on Bagoing it from Thursday to Saturday. So.
Yep. So can't wait to see you. And thanks again for joining us on this edition of the Night Bite.
Night, guys.